There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over a person who is hurting inside a relationship they cannot seem to leave. It is not the quiet of peace. It is not the quiet of contentment. It is the quiet of someone who has had the same conversation in their head so many times that the words have lost their shape. Someone who wakes up in the morning and lies still for a moment, just a moment, before the weight of everything they are carrying comes back to them. You have probably met someone like that. You might be someone like that. And if you are, I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not foolish. You are not naive. You are not broken. You are a person who loved someone. And love, real love, even when it is complicated and painful, does not simply dissolve because someone tells you it should. Leaving is not always the hard part. Understanding why you stay, that is the part that requires something deeper. That is what this conversation is about. My name is Harriet Sinclair. I am not a therapist. I am not here with a list of solutions or a set of rules for how relationships are supposed to work. I am not here to tell you what to do or to look at anyone in this story and decide that they should have known better. I am only here to help you understand, because I think understanding is often the thing people need most. Not judgment, not advice delivered in a firm voice, but the quiet recognition that what they are feeling makes sense, that there are reasons, real and human and complicated reasons, for why people stay in places that hurt them. So let us sit with that together for a while. Every year, researchers and counselors and ordinary people who have simply lived long enough ask the same question: why do people stay? It is a question that sounds simple from the outside. It sounds almost impatient. If something hurts you, you remove yourself from it. That is instinct. That is logic. A hand on a hot stove pulls back immediately. But a heart does not work like a hand. A heart has history. It has memory. It has a remarkable and sometimes devastating capacity to hold two things at once: the pain of where you are and the love that brought you there. And it does not let go of either one easily. The relationships we are talking about today are not necessarily relationships defined by violence or dramatic cruelty. Those exist, and they are serious, and they deserve their own careful conversation. But the relationships that quietly consume the most people, the ones that the most people struggle to understand and to leave, are often far more subtle than that. They are the relationships where someone is not always unkind, where there are genuinely good days, where the person you are with can make you feel in one moment like you are the most important person in the world, and in the next like you are disappearing, where the hurt is not always loud, where it accumulates slowly in small withdrawals and quiet criticisms and moments of feeling unseen, until one day you look up and realize you have been diminished, not all at once, but gradually, in ways that were easy to explain away at the time. These are the relationships that are hardest to leave, and the reasons people stay in them are deeply, profoundly human. Let me tell you a story. Nora Veltri was 31 years old when she met Callum Reese at a friend's dinner party in early spring. She almost did not go that night. She had been working long hours at the architecture firm where she had spent the last 6 years quietly building something she was proud of. She was tired. She had told her friend Britt that she would come for an hour, maybe two, and then make her excuses and go home to the particular kind of solitude she had grown comfortable with. She stayed until midnight. Callum was sitting at the far end of the table when she arrived, talking to someone she did not recognize. He was not immediately striking in the way that makes a person self-conscious. He was simply present, attentive, thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, said something that was worth hearing. They ended up beside each other at the table almost by accident. He asked her what she was working on, and she told him about a renovation project she was overseeing, a community library in a neighborhood that had been underserved for decades. He asked questions that surprised her. Not polite, surface-level questions, but genuine ones. He wanted to know what the building would feel like to someone walking in for the first time. He wanted to know what she hoped people would experience there. She told him. She told him things she had not told most people, because most people did not ask. By the end of the evening, she had his number in her phone, and something she had not felt in a long time, a kind of cautious, reluctant hope. Their first proper date was 2 weeks later, a Sunday afternoon, a walk along the river, coffee that turned into dinner. He brought her a book she had mentioned in passing that first night, a collection of essays on urban memory and architecture. She had forgotten she had mentioned it. He had not. She thought about that for a long time afterward. That small, deliberate act of attention. Over the following months, Callum became a steady and warming presence in her life. He was intelligent and curious. He had a dry, quiet sense of humor that she appreciated. He had a complicated family history, a father who had been largely absent, a mother who had worked 2 jobs through most of his childhood, and he spoke about it with a kind of measured honesty that she found moving. He was not perfect. He could be distant when he was stressed, disappearing into silence rather than reaching for conversation. He had opinions that sometimes shaded into stubbornness. He was not easy. But Nora had never been looking for easy. She had been looking for real, and this felt real. By the time winter arrived, she had reorganized her life around him without quite noticing. She introduced him to her family at Christmas. She started keeping a drawer of his things in her apartment. She started thinking in plural, not what do I want, but what do we want. She was happy. Not in an uncomplicated way. She was not someone who trusted uncomplicated happiness, but in a way that felt solid and chosen. She was happy in the way that feels like something you have built, not something you have found. That is important to understand, because when something begins to hurt, something you have built, something you have invested in, something you believe in, you do not simply put it down. You try to fix it. You try harder. You look for what you might be doing wrong. The first sign was so small that Nora did not recognize it as a sign at all. It was a Tuesday evening in February. She had had a difficult day. A client had rejected a proposal she had worked on for 3 weeks, and she came home feeling deflated and quietly angry at herself. She called Callum. He answered, and she started to tell him about it, and somewhere in the middle of the second sentence, she became aware that he was distracted. She could hear it in the quality of his listening, or rather the absence of it. She paused. She asked if this was a bad time. He said, "No, go on, sorry." She went on, but something had shifted. She wrapped up the story more quickly than she had intended, skipping the parts that actually hurt. And he said the right things, that the client was wrong, that her work was good, that she should not take it personally. But they were the right things said without weight. The way you say something when you are present in body but not in attention. She got off the phone and sat for a moment with the particular loneliness of feeling unseen by someone who is supposed to see you. Then she told herself she was being oversensitive. He was tired. He had his own stresses. She did not need him to hold every difficulty for her. And that was true. And also, the dismissal of her own feeling began there. Over the next several months, there were more moments like it. Not dramatic ones, not moments that would make sense if she described them to someone else. Moments that described plainly would sound like nothing. He canceled plans twice in 1 month, both times with valid reasons that she could not argue with. He made a comment about a dress she was wearing, not cruel, just offhand, just a casual remark that she looked different in it than he expected, and she changed before they left the house without him asking her to. He began responding to her messages more slowly, and when she mentioned it gently one evening, he looked at her with a kind of mild surprise, as though she had said something slightly unreasonable, and said he had just been busy. She believed him. She wanted to believe him. And then there were the good days, which made the complicated days harder to hold on to. There were evenings when he was fully present and fully warm, and she remembered with something close to relief why she had chosen this. There were mornings when she woke up beside him and felt certain. He would do something small, remember an appointment she had mentioned, cook the meal she had talked about wanting, reach for her hand in the middle of an ordinary moment, and she would feel the anxiety of the past week dissolve. That is the pattern that is most difficult to recognize from inside it. Because the good moments are real. They are not performances, or if they are convincing enough that they feel like truth, and so the painful moments become something to wait through, something to survive until the goodness comes back. And slowly, without ever deciding to, a person reorganizes their emotional life around managing the difficult days and cherishing the good ones, rather than asking whether this is simply how things are. By the spring of the following year, Nora had become quieter in herself. Not in a visible way, she was still capable and professional and present in the world, but inside she had learned a kind of careful self-monitoring. She knew which subjects created distance between her and Callum, and she had stopped raising them. She knew that he did not like to feel criticized, and so she had learned to phrase her needs as questions rather than requests, as observations rather than feelings. She had learned to make herself smaller in the spaces where she used to take up room. She did not think of this as losing herself. She thought of it as compromise. She thought of it as maturity. She thought of it as loving someone the way they needed to be loved. She was not wrong that love requires adjustment, but adjustment and erasure are different things, and the line between them can be very difficult to see when you are standing on the wrong side of it.
There is a concept in psychology that describes what forms between two people when pain and tenderness become so intertwined that they are nearly inseparable. It is sometimes called a trauma bond. The phrase sounds clinical. It sounds like something that happens to other people in other circumstances. But what it describes is something that can develop in any relationship, where positive experiences and painful ones alternate, where someone who sometimes makes you feel cherished also sometimes makes you feel dismissed, where the relief of a good day comes precisely because of the tension of the days before it. The brain, in its extraordinary effort to protect us, begins to associate the person with the relief they provide from the pain they cause. The cycle becomes its own attachment. The relationship becomes not just something you want, but something your nervous system has learned to need. Nora did not know this language. She would not have used these words. What she felt was simply that Callum was the person she wanted to talk to at the end of every day, even on the days when talking to him left her feeling lonelier than she had started. She had also begun quietly to fear being without him. This was not something she said aloud. She was a self-sufficient person. She had lived alone for years before him. She had built a career and a life she was proud of. She did not believe in the kind of dependency she observed in other people and privately found difficult to understand. And so the fear felt shameful to her. It felt like evidence of something she did not want to be. But the fear was there. It was the fear that without him, the good things about her life would feel less witnessed. The fear that the person who knew her most intimately, who had seen her in her tiredness and her ambition and her doubt, would be gone, and starting again from the beginning with someone else would require a kind of courage she was not sure she had. The fear that she was, at 33, further along in her life than she had planned to be without the things she had always wanted, and that leaving meant accepting that the future might not arrive in the shape she had imagined. Alongside the fear was something else, something that kept her going back to the beginning, to the dinner party, the walk along the river, the book he had brought her, all the evidence of who he was capable of being. She believed he would return to that. She believed that the distance and the small cruelties and the patterns of withdrawal were circumstances, not character, that something was happening in his life, stress, unprocessed history, things she did not fully understand, that was making him behave in ways that were not really him, that if she was patient enough, present enough, steady enough, the version of him that she had fallen in love with would come back. This is one of the most powerful forces that keeps people in painful relationships. Not delusion, hope. The specific, personal hope of someone who has seen the best of a person and cannot stop believing in it. Therapists sometimes call this the sunk cost fallacy, borrowed from economics, the tendency to continue investing in something because of what you have already put in, rather than because of what it is currently offering you. The 2 years Nora had given to this relationship, the adjustments she had made, the parts of herself she had quietly set aside, all of it became, paradoxically, a reason to stay, because to leave would mean accepting that all of it had been for nothing, and that felt unbearable. But there was something else underneath all of these layers, something that had been there long before Callum. Nora had grown up with a father who was warm but intermittent, present and attentive in good periods, then overwhelmed and withdrawn during difficult ones. She had learned, as children do, to read the emotional temperature of a room very quickly. She had learned to calibrate herself to someone else's mood. She had learned that love was something you waited for during the difficult stretches, and that when it returned, it was worth everything you had done to hold on. She had not chosen Callum because he resembled her father. She had not thought about it that way at all. But the emotional landscape of their relationship felt familiar to her in a way that was difficult to distinguish from comfort. The uncertainty felt like something she knew how to survive. The good days felt worth waiting for in a way she had been trained long ago to believe they were. I want to pause here for a moment. If any part of this story feels familiar to you, if you have ever stayed in a place that hurt you, waiting for it to return to what it once was, I would like you to leave the word "stay" in the comments below. Not as an admission of weakness, not as a confession, just as a small acknowledgement that you understand what we are talking about here, that you have felt this, that you are not alone in it. And if this conversation is giving you something, if it is helping you understand something you have been carrying, I would be grateful if you would subscribe. We talk about relationships here with the seriousness and care they deserve, not as content, but as human experience. There is more to Nora's story. Let us continue. By the time Nora had been with Callum for 2.5 years, something had changed in the texture of her daily life. It was not something she could point to precisely. The relationship had not dramatically worsened. There had been no single incident that divided things cleanly into before and after. It had been gradual, the way erosion is gradual. Small things, accumulated. She had stopped sharing her work with him in any meaningful way. Not because he was unkind about it, he was not explicitly, but because she had learned that his responses were variable in a way she could not predict. Sometimes he was engaged and enthusiastic, and she left those conversations feeling seen. Other times there was a subtle, critical note, an observation that another approach might have worked better, a question that sounded like curiosity but landed like judgment, and she would spend days afterwards second-guessing herself. She had also stopped seeing certain friends as often, not because Callum had asked her to, he had not asked her to, not directly, but she had absorbed over time a low-level awareness that certain friendships created friction. A close friend named Wendy, who had known Nora since university, had never warmed to Callum and had said so plainly once during a conversation that Nora had not been able to forget. She had distanced herself from Wendy not because she believed Callum over her friend, but because maintaining both of them required a kind of emotional management that she was too tired to sustain. She had become tired. That was the truest thing she could have said about herself during that period. A deep, accumulated tiredness that had nothing to do with sleep. She began having the conversation with herself, the one that people in her situation often have, quietly, usually late at night or during long commutes or in the shower, the moment when the noise of daily life quiets enough for the honest thoughts to surface. She would think, "This is not making me happy." And then immediately, "But I love him." And then, "Love does not mean it has to hurt." And then, "It does not always hurt. There are good days." And then, "Are the good days enough?" And then she would think about leaving. She would let herself sit with that thought, actually leaving, telling him, dividing the life they had built, calling Wendy and saying, "You were right," facing the empty apartment, starting again. And the thought would bring a wave of something she could not entirely distinguish as grief or fear, probably both. They felt the same. She told herself she was not ready. She told herself she needed to be more certain before making a decision this significant. She told herself that leaving in a moment of pain was different from leaving after real deliberation. All of this was true, and all of it was also a way of not leaving.
She tried to address things directly. She chose a quiet evening when things were calm between them, and she said, carefully and without accusation, that she had been feeling distant from him lately, that she missed the closeness they had had, that she wanted to understand if something was wrong. He listened. He said he had been stressed. There were things at work that were weighing on him, things he had not fully shared with her. He reached for her hand. He said she was important to him. He said he did not always know how to show up the way she needed, and that he was sorry for that. She felt in that moment the relief she had been waiting months to feel. She leaned into it. She told herself that this was what honesty in a relationship looked like, two people finding their way back to each other. She told herself that what she had almost thrown away in her darker moments of doubt was something real and worth keeping. 2 weeks later, the distance had returned. The conversation might as well not have happened. And something shifted in her then, not dramatically, not loudly, just a quiet understanding that began to form at the edges of her awareness, like the first pale light before a day begins. It was an ordinary Wednesday in October. Nora had gone for a walk after work, something she had started doing more often, a way of being alone with her thoughts without the specific weight of her apartment, which had begun to feel like a place where she held her breath. She sat down on a bench near the river. The water was dark and slow. There were other people around, a man throwing a ball for a dog, 2 women walking with a stroller, a teenager on a bicycle, all of them in the middle of their ordinary lives, and she watched them with the particular attention of someone who has been living inside their own head for too long. She thought about a conversation she'd had with her mother the previous weekend. Her mother had not said anything pointed, she was not that kind of mother, but she had asked gently whether Nora was sleeping well, whether she seemed a little tired, and Nora had said she was fine, work was busy, she was just a bit run down. But sitting on that bench, she thought about what her mother had actually seen. She thought about what she looked like now compared to 3 years ago, not physically, but in some harder-to-name quality, the quality of someone who is fully inhabiting their own life versus someone who is managing it. She thought about the woman she had been at that dinner party, the one who stayed until midnight, not because she was waiting for something, but because she was enjoying herself. She thought about the book Callum brought her on their first date. She had not finished it. She had set it down somewhere months ago and not picked it up again, and she could not entirely remember why. She had set herself down somewhere too, and she was not entirely sure she had gone back for herself. That was the moment. Not a revelation in the cinematic sense, not something that rearranged everything instantly, just a quiet internal settling of something she had known for a long time but had not been willing to look at directly. She was not happy. She had not been happy for a long time, and she had spent so much of her energy trying to understand why Callum was the way he was, and trying to be patient with it, and trying to remain in the relationship without losing herself entirely, that she had never quite asked the simpler question, what do I want my life to feel like? And the answer, sitting on a bench by the river in October, watching a dog chase a ball with uncomplicated joy, was not this. It was not a decision, exactly, not yet. Decisions require energy and courage and a kind of forward momentum that she was not sure she had that evening. But it was the beginning of one, the moment before the moment, the awareness that precedes action. She sat there for a long time, until the light changed and the man and his dog went home and the river went quietly dark. Then she got up and walked home.
I want to stay with Nora for a moment before we close. Not to tell you what happens next in her story, because the ending is not the point. The point is the accumulation. The way the relationship began with something real, and the way the harm was so subtle and so gradual that by the time it was clearly visible, it had already done a great deal of its work. The way every reason to stay was also a true thing, and the way true things can still be, in the end, insufficient. There is something that I think about when I consider the people who stay in relationships that hurt them. We talk very often in our culture about strength, about the strength to leave, about the courage it takes to walk away. And that is not wrong. It does take courage, real courage.
But I think there is a different kind of courage that is less often acknowledged. The courage that it takes to stay for as long as you do. The courage of someone who keeps trying, who keeps showing up, who keeps having the hard conversations, who keeps choosing the person they love even when it costs them something. That is also a kind of strength. It is just one that can go on too long. And I think that is something that people who have stayed, or who are still staying, deserve to hear. That the staying was not stupidity, that it was not failure, that it was the expression of something deeply human, the capacity to love and to hope and to hold on to what was once good, even when the evidence of the present is pointing somewhere harder. But hope, when it is not met, is a quiet kind of suffering. And there comes a point, and only you can know when that point is, when the question changes, when it is no longer about whether the relationship can be saved, or whether the other person will change, or whether you are being patient enough, or communicating well enough, or loving them the right way. When the question becomes, what is this costing me? And is that cost something I have chosen, or something that has simply been taken? The people who stay in relationships that hurt them are not there because they do not know better. They are there because they are human. Because attachment is powerful, and grief is real, and the self-protective instinct to hold on to something familiar is very, very hard to override. They are there because they remember the beginning, because they believe in the person the one they love is capable of being, because they have made a life inside this relationship, and the idea of dismantling it feels like a kind of death. They are there because no one ever grows up dreaming of leaving. We grow up dreaming of staying, of finding the person we are going to remain with, through difficulty and change, for a long time. And that dream does not let go easily. It is also possible to stay too long in service of a dream that the present reality has not been honoring for some time. The psychologist Bessel van der Kolk wrote that the body keeps the score, that what we carry emotionally is held in us physically, in our sleep and our appetite and our posture and our tiredness. Nora's mother saw it in her face before Nora had let herself see it anywhere else. The body knows. If you are in a relationship that is costing you more than it is giving you, and you already know the difference deep down, I am not going to tell you what to do. That is not mine to tell. But I will ask you the question that I think is worth sitting with. Not in an accusatory way, not as a challenge, just as a genuine, quiet thing to consider when you are alone with yourself. Are you staying because you love them, or are you staying because you are afraid of what it would mean to let go? Because love, real love, love that is good for you and for the person you are with, does not require you to disappear inside it. It does not require you to monitor yourself constantly, to make yourself smaller, to wait for the good days the way you wait for weather to change. Love, at its healthiest, feels like expansion, like being more yourself, not less. That does not mean love is simple. It is not. It requires work and patience and the willingness to remain through difficulty. But there is a difference between difficulty and diminishment, between a hard season and a permanent condition. And the first step toward understanding that difference, the first step toward anything, is the willingness to stop explaining away what you already know. Nora sat on a bench by the river and let herself know it. That is not an ending, it is a beginning. And if you are somewhere in the middle of this, if you are sitting with your own version of this question, your own version of this weight, I hope this conversation has given you something. Not answers, not instructions, just the feeling of being understood. Because you are not alone in this. And whatever you are carrying, you are not carrying it because you are weak. You are carrying it because you are human, and because you loved someone, and because that has always been, for all of us, one of the most complicated things there is. My name is Harriet Sinclair. Thank you for being here.